I never imagined that a Tuesday morning in autumn would unravel everything I believed about loyalty, legacy, and leadership. The office in Lisbon thrummed with the familiar hum of computers, the soft tapping of keyboards, and the occasional murmur of distant voices. I sat at my desk in the marketing analytics department of Origin Tech, reviewing the latest campaign performance spreadsheets spread across my monitor. Full sunlight filtered through the blinds, casting narrow stripes of gold across my keyboard as I deciphered click-through rates and conversion metrics. Suddenly, the glass door to my corner office swung open with a force that rattled the framed certificates on the wall. No warning, no polite knock, just a jarring bang that made my heart lurch. In strode Damien Voss, the new Chief Operating Officer, his charcoal grey suit impeccably tailored, shoulders squared, and jaw set in a way that spoke of unyielding confidence. His gaze locked onto me with an intensity that left no doubt. He came with purpose. "Arlo," he said, tossing a leather-bound folder onto my desk so forcefully that it slid and nearly crashed to the floor. "We need to talk." "Now." I swallowed, forcing my expression to remain calm, though adrenaline pulsed through me like wildfire. I rose and gestured to the chair opposite me. "Of course, Damien. Please, sit." But he remained standing, one hand in his pocket, as though towering over me was part of the conversation. I recognized that stance from every power play I had witnessed in boardrooms over the years. The move that makes the other person feel small. "The board has decided to restructure our leadership team," he said, voice clipped and rehearsed. "I believe Origin Tech needs hard-driving strategists at the helm, people who can push results, not just analyze data. Effective immediately, your position is being eliminated." My breath caught. "You're letting me go?" I managed, my voice steadier than I felt. He studied me with cool detachment. "Don't dramatize it, Arlo. Your department's numbers are solid, but you lack the aggressive vision thereafter. Collect your badge and laptop by 5 p.m. HR will send you the details on your severance package." I nodded, my mind racing. I could feel every second of silence stretching out as I processed the injustice of it. I had led my team to record engagement rates, optimized campaigns that had netted millions in revenue, and yet here I was, discarded like yesterday's memo. I lifted my chin and said softly, "Thank you for letting me know so clearly." Damien shrugged and walked out, leaving only the faint echo of his footsteps and a folder lying on my desk. I stared at the Origin Tech logo on the folder, a stylized phoenix rising above waves, and allowed myself a moment to remember why I'd poured my heart into this company. It wasn't just a job, it was my grandfather's dream. He had founded Origin Tech a generation ago in Porto, starting with nothing but an idea and relentless determination. As a child, I had spent summer holidays in that very building, hiding in supply closets to surprise him with drawings or staying late to watch him tweak prototypes under the glow of a desk lamp. My grandfather, Arlo Silva, believed that a company's true power lay not in its products but in the people who built them. "Numbers can lie, Arlo," he'd tell me, ruffling my dark curls, "but passion never does." It was his ethos that had drawn me back to Portugal after college in London. I had accepted the analyst role with humility, eager to learn every nuance of the business, from customer support to product testing. He had encouraged my curiosity. "You're not just an employee, you're part of this family. Earn your place, and you'll see what pride feels like." When he passed away 5 years ago, The company's soul seemed to dim overnight. Board members who had respected his warmth made room for executives who saw only balance sheets. A year later, Damien Voss arrived, polished, persuasive, and determined to remake Origin Tech in his own image. Under his leadership, staff were cut, projects shelved, and traditions abandoned. The office felt colder, more clinical, as though the human heartbeat had been replaced by a metronome counting down until profit targets were met. I had stayed, hoping to protect what remained of my grandfather's legacy. I stayed for Elena from accounting, who always slipped me a reassuring smile and a fresh cup of espresso when she saw me burning the midnight oil. I stayed for Matteo in R&D, who nodded enthusiastically at every innovative idea I brought forward, even when Damien dismissed them as too unconventional. Together we quietly held on to the values that once defined the company. Tonight, as I packed my few personal effects into a cardboard box, a small potted plant, a framed photo of my grandfather smiling at me on his last birthday, my lucky pen, I realized that this forced exit was a challenge, not an end. I taped the box closed, tucked the folder under my arm, and left the office without a backward glance. Outside, the Lisbon air was crisp with approaching winter. I stepped onto the cobblestones, heart pounding, but instead of fear, I felt something else. Electricity. I whispered to the night sky, "You're right, grandfather. I'm ready." I tucked my cardboard box under one arm and clutched the leather-bound folder with the Origin Tech emblem under the other. The chilly Lisbon evening wrapped itself around me as I emerged onto the cobblestone street. My breath rose in soft clouds matching the swirl of autumn leaves at my feet. I moved with purpose toward the address, Mr. Duarte had given me a modest townhouse in the Alfama district, its warm windows a stark contrast to the sterile glass towers I had just left behind. Inside, I was greeted by Mr. Joaquim Duarte, my grandfather's long-time legal advisor. His study was lined with bookshelves heavy with law tomes and leather-bound ledgers. He poured me a cup of chamomile tea and gestured to a second folder resting on a low table. Its weight in my hands felt like destiny. "Arlo," he began, using the name my grandfather had always preferred, "your grandfather entrusted me with these documents to be delivered on your 30th birthday. I'm honored to fulfill his wish." With trembling fingers, I opened the folder. Inside lay a trust agreement granting me ownership of 90% of Origin Tech's outstanding shares, accompanied by the original stock certificates signed with Manuel Silva's hand. I sank into the worn leather armchair, stunned. Memories flooded back. Summer afternoons spent tinkering in his workshop. Evenings when he taught me to program simple code on that old terminal. Mornings brightened by his booming laughter as he shared tales of trials and triumphs. And now, 90%. The words felt surreal, as though they belonged to a different life. "Why did he choose now?" I whispered. Mr. Duarte offered a gentle smile. "Your grandfather wanted you to learn every corner of this company before wielding its power. He believed true leaders emerge only after mastering every role." I closed my eyes, letting resolve settle in my chest. This would not be a hasty confrontation fueled by anger, but a calculated reclamation of what was rightfully mine. Over the next 2 days, Mr. Duarte guided me through the legal labyrinth, drafting the notice of a special shareholders meeting, citing the Articles of Association, and mapping the exact procedure to remove a CEO under Portuguese corporate law. Yet authority means nothing without allies. I reached out discreetly to Elena in accounting. Her quiet support had buoyed me many times, and she agreed to stand by me. I met Matteo at our old cafe. Over espresso he nodded and offered his loyalty, ready to testify on my behalf before the board. That evening, back in my grandfather's apartment, I laid the original certificates flat and read the embossed words, "Held in trust for heir of Manuel Silva." I traced the seal, feeling the weight of legacy and the spark of possibility. I drafted the official notice by lamplight, ensuring every clause was precise, every reference bulletproof. When Monday dawned, I dressed in the navy suit I reserved for momentous occasions. Its crisp lines felt like armor. My reflection revealed eyes steeled with determination. I placed the sealed envelope into my messenger bag, locked the door, and stepped into Lisbon's quiet morning, ready to reclaim my family's dream and restore Origin Tech to its rightful path. Monday morning arrived with a muted grandeur. Lisbon's sky was overcast, the air heavy with expectation, as I made my way through winding Alfama alleys toward the Baixa district. Each cobblestone seemed to echo my heartbeat, steady, deliberate. I clutched my messenger bag, where the sealed envelope containing the notice of a special shareholders meeting rested like a sleeping giant. My tailored navy suit felt surprisingly comfortable, as though it had been waiting for this very moment. At Origin Tech's headquarters, the glass facade reflected the grey sky and my own determined expression. I stepped through the revolving doors, exchanged polite nods with security, no one batted an eye, and took the elevator to the executive floor. The corridors were eerily quiet. Perhaps word of my departure had reached some ears, but the rumour mill was churning too slowly to grasp the truth. I paused outside the boardroom, smoothing the lapel of my blazer. Through the frosted glass I could see Damien Voss seated at the head of the long mahogany table, poring over a thick stack of papers. He glanced up, his brow knitting in mild surprise. He had not expected to see me again. Good. I mentally noted the slight tension in his posture, the quick tightening of his jaw. I knocked once, clear and confident. Damien looked up, his surprise softening into irritation. "This meeting is for board members only," he snapped, voice low. I slid the envelope onto the small side table by the door. "I'm not here as a former employee," I said, voice steady. "I'm here as majority shareholder." His astonishment was palpable, as though I had spoken a foreign language. "Majority shareholder? What are you talking about?" I allowed myself a faint smile. "Please, sit down, you'll see." I reached into my bag and retrieved the trust agreement and stock certificates. The paper felt crisp and authoritative in my hand. I opened them at the marked pages and turned to Damien. "I've been granted 90% of Origin Tech's outstanding shares," I said, sliding the documents across the mahogany surface toward him. "Effective today, the moment I turned 30, this trust activated under Portuguese corporate law." His eyes darted over the pages, disbelief warping his features. "This is impossible," he muttered, flicking to the notarized seal and signature. "Not impossible," I corrected softly. "Meticulously planned." I let the silence hang for a beat before continuing. My grandfather knew the right time to reveal this power would be when the company needed a course correction. That time is now. I looked around the room at the other board members, some of whom regarded me with curiosity, others with thinly veiled concern. I hereby call a special shareholders meeting. Under Article 23 of our bylaws, I have the authority to convene and set the agenda. Today's first order of business: review and, if warranted, replace the chief executive. Murmurs rippled through the table like a rising tide. A senior director, Mariana Costa, cleared her throat. Arlo, if you truly hold these shares, you have the votes to carry any resolution. But are you prepared to lead the company yourself? I met her gaze with unflinching resolve. I am prepared to restore the values and vision my grandfather instilled. Origin Tech belongs to its people, to innovation, and to integrity. We will not cower behind spreadsheets and hollow rhetoric. Damien's posture stiffened. He rose, planting both hands on the table's edge. You can't remove me on a whim. I've driven growth, driven efficiency. Efficiency without empathy is hollow, I interrupted. Your tenure has seen record turnover, plummeting morale, and stalled innovation. These numbers speak louder than any speech. I tapped the folder marked Performance Reviews. Employee satisfaction down by 38%, turnover up by 47%, revenue flat while competitors surged. This is not a healthy ecosystem. Behind me, Elena and Matteo sat in the gallery chairs I had requested, offering quiet support. I drew strength from their presence, from the memory of our shared late-night strategy sessions. Damien's voice cracked. You're twisting facts for revenge. I'm not seeking revenge, I replied. I'm seeking renewal. The board will now vote on executive leadership. The secretary passed out ballots stamped with the company seal. One by one, the directors cast their votes. The tension was so thick I could almost taste it. When the final ballot landed on the table, Mariana tapped her pen. 90% majority confirmed, she announced. The motion to remove Damien Voss as CEO carries. Damien's face went pale. He slammed his fist on the table, rattling my grandfather's framed photograph hanging on the far wall. Without a word, he stormed out, the door echoing behind him. Silence reigned for a moment before applause broke out, some tentative, some enthusiastic, but genuine. I rose and took the head seat. The room shifted, chairs scraping, as every eye fell on me. I spoke with calm conviction. Thank you. This is not the end of leadership upheaval. It is the beginning of a new chapter, one rooted in collaboration, creativity, and respect. Together, we will chart Origin Tech's course forward. As I looked around at my colleagues, faces once shadowed by doubt now bright with possibility, I felt a surge of hope. The phoenix on the company logo had nothing on the rebirth we were about to undertake. And in that moment, for the first time in years, I understood what leadership truly meant. The rest of Monday blurred into a whirlwind of introductions, handshakes, and tightly scheduled meetings. By mid-afternoon, the boardroom had emptied, leaving tidied tables and a single, lingering echo of our morning victory. I gathered my papers and stepped into the adjacent lounge, where a handful of senior directors stood in small clusters, exchanging tentative smiles and cautious congratulations. The weight of responsibility settled on my shoulders. 90% ownership meant 90% accountability. I found Elena by the espresso machine, her face lighting up when she saw me approach. "You did it," she whispered, voice cracking with relief. I returned her smile, though my mind already raced toward the tasks ahead. "Thank you," I said, wrapping her in a brief hug. "Now it really begins." The first order of business was to convene an all-hands meeting. I phoned facilities and asked them to prepare the main auditorium, a vaulted room with high ceilings and rows of seats that once felt cavernous under Damien's sterile leadership. Now I envisioned it as a place of possibility. I drafted my speech as I walked back to my office, a frank acknowledgement of the past, a vision for the future, and a clear call to action. Everything hinged on honesty. At 4 p.m., the entire company was assembled. The lights dimmed, and I stepped onto the stage. The hush that fell over the crowd felt sacred. This was my moment to rebuild trust. I took a deep breath and began. "Good afternoon. I am Arlo Silva, and as of today, I am your majority shareholder and interim chief vision officer. I know many of you have questions. Why did this happen? What does it mean? First, I want to acknowledge the fear and uncertainty these past months have sown. We've lost talented colleagues, shelved promising projects, and in too many meetings felt like cogs rather than creators." I paused, letting the honesty sink in. Eyes met mine, some wary, some hopeful. "But I believe in this company because it's made of people, not processes. My grandfather built Origin Tech on the foundation of ingenuity, integrity, and respect. That legacy didn't vanish overnight, and it didn't disappear because of a single CEO. It lives in each of you who show up every day, solving problems, pushing boundaries, and caring about our customers." A murmur of agreement rippled through the room. I clicked the remote in my hand, and the screen behind me lit up with 3 bullet points. 1. People First Initiative. Establish a committee to ensure employee voices shape our policies. Dusra, innovation incubators. Dedicate resources and time for cross-departmental project sprints. 3. Transparent metrics. Share performance data company-wide to foster collective ownership of goals. I elaborated on each, outlining timelines and asking for volunteer sign-ups. "This isn't lip service," I emphasized. "We will hold regular town halls, open office hours, and department forums. You will see real changes because your feedback will drive them." After my speech, the applause was tentative at first, then grew genuine. I felt the energy shift. The room no longer buzzed with anxiety, but with cautious optimism. I invited Elena and Matteo on stage to join me for a Q&A session. They stood by my side like guardians of our shared vision. The questions flowed. How soon would layoffs be reversed? What about the budget cuts on the R&D wing? Would previous projects be revived? I answered each with transparency. We would review all pending R&D proposals within the week, seek to rehire key contributors, and allocate an emergency fund to restart 2 high-potential pilots. As for budget, I promised to balance prudence with opportunity, no more blanket austerity, but targeted investments. When the meeting ended, employees lingered in small groups, animatedly discussing the changes. I slipped backstage and exhaled, allowing myself a moment of relief. Matteo appeared, holding 2 fresh coffees. "You nailed it," he said, pressing one into my hand. "People are talking already. This feels different." I nodded, sipping the bittersweet brew. "Thank you." But it's only the beginning. My gaze drifted toward the empty stage. It no longer felt intimidating, but inviting, a platform for collaboration rather than control. That evening I convened my first executive committee meeting. Next to me sat Mariana Costa, whose steady experience from my grandfather's era was invaluable. Across the table were heads of finance, HR, product, and customer success, some unfamiliar faces, many weary from recent turbulence. I laid out our three-point plan and asked each leader to present a concrete action item they could deliver in the next 30 days. We agreed on deadlines, checkpoints, and a shared digital dashboard to track progress. Before we adjourned, HR head Sophia Pereira raised a hand. "Arlo, I want to propose a re-onboarding week, an orientation for former employees who may wish to return, and to re-establish our cultural values with new hires." Heads around the table nodded in agreement. I smiled. Excellent idea. Let's make it happen. Walking to my office afterward, I felt the gentle hum of activity, doors opening for conversations, whiteboards filling with ideas, laughter echoing in hallways. For the first time since my grandfather's passing, Origin Tech felt alive again. When I finally sat at my desk, I opened the folder containing my grandfather's old notes, a journal he kept in the early days, full of handwritten sketches and mission statements. I read his scrawled words, "Innovation with heart." I closed the journal, folded it carefully, and placed it in my desk drawer, a reminder that our work must always honor the values that built us. As dusk settled over Lisbon, I looked out at the city lights glittering against the Tagus River. My journey was just beginning, but tonight I felt one step closer to fulfilling the promise my grandfather had entrusted to me and to the people who would shape Origin Tech's next chapter. Tuesday dawned bright and clear, a sharp contrast to the heavy atmosphere of the previous week. As I stepped into Origin Tech's lobby, the reception desk clerk, Maria, offered me a warm smile and a nod of recognition that felt more genuine than any forced politeness I had seen under Damien's tenure. The company's new energy was palpable, even in small moments like this, and I nodded back gratefully before heading toward the executive elevator. My first stop was the R&D wing on the 4th floor. For months, projects had languished in limbo, promising prototypes, half-finished code bases, and nascent hardware designs gathering dust behind closed lab doors. I passed through the corridor lined with frosted glass windows and entered Lab 4, where I found Dr. Sanjay Patel and his team clustered around a bench, testing a compact neural sensor array. Their surprised looks turned into bright smiles when they saw me. "Good morning, Dr. Patel," I said, extending my hand. "I wanted to see your progress firsthand." He shook my hand firmly, relief and excitement in his eyes. "Thank you for coming, Arlo. We've made significant strides on the prototype, but without proper funding and staffing, we've had to slow down." I glanced at the array, sleek, modular, and elegant in its simplicity. "Not anymore," I replied. "Your project is one of two we're immediately reactivating. I've allocated resources to bring back 2 of your former colleagues and expand your testing budget by 25%. A ripple of gratitude passed through the team. As I left the lab, Dr. Patel called after me, "This means the world to us. We won't let you down." I smiled, feeling the familiar spark of purpose ignite. This was why I had fought so hard, so ideas like these could flourish. Back in my temporary office, I reviewed the agenda for the day's meetings. At 10:30, I had a session with HR to finalize the re-onboarding week plan. At noon, a budget review with finance, and in the afternoon, a one-on-one with Matteo to discuss talent retention. I paused for a moment, remembering how I had once bounced between departments, learning every role. Now I had the authority to shape each aspect of the company. In the HR suite, Sofia Pereira and her team had transformed the once intimidating conference room into a welcoming space, complete with colourful posters displaying our core values: collaboration, integrity, innovation, and respect. I sat at the round table with Sofia, Elena, and 2 new HR coordinators. Our goal, Sofia began, is to bring back former employees who left under the last regime, as well as ensure new hires understand who we are. I nodded. Exactly. Let's set targets, bring back at least 10 veterans during re-onboarding week, and schedule orientation sessions for all teams. We'll host panel discussions where people can share experiences and ideas directly with leadership. Eleanor chimed in, we should include a mentorship component, pair returning staff with newer employees. That way, knowledge flows both directions. Sophia typed notes rapidly, then looked up. Brilliant! I'll draft a detailed plan today and circulate it by evening. Next, I met with Javier from finance in the glass-walled boardroom. His crisp white shirt and steely efficiency seemed out of place amidst the renewed warmth of the office, but he greeted me respectfully. Arlo, the reallocation request for R&D and HR is approved. We've freed up funds by cutting back on extravagant travel expenses and consultant fees. I exhaled a breath I didn't realize I'd been holding. Thank you, Javier. Let's also create a transparent dashboard, updated weekly, so everyone can see where resources go. No more surprises. He nodded, already picturing the spreadsheets. After lunch, a quick wrap from the company cafe, where employees chatted animatedly, I walked to Matteo's corner office. He stood when I entered, offering a small mug of coffee. Thought you might need this, he said with a grin. I accepted it gratefully. We settled on the couch and I asked, how are you feeling about the talent challenges? Any concerns? He leaned forward. We risk losing another generation of engineers if we don't act fast. Team morale is up, but workloads have spiked. People need assurance, clear roadmaps, realistic deadlines, and recognition. I nodded thoughtfully. Agreed. Let's pilot a sprint rhythm program. 2-week focused work sprints, followed by a 2-day creative break for all teams. During breaks, folks can pursue passion projects or cross-functional collaborations. Matteo's eyes lit up. That could be a game changer. I'll draft a rollout plan by tomorrow. By late afternoon, I returned to my desk and opened my grandfather's journal, finding a blank page bookmarked. I wrote a single line beneath his handwriting. Day 1 of renewal, people first, always. I closed the journal and placed it back gently. The office lights cast a warm glow over my desk as I looked out at the city skyline, dotted with terracotta rooftops and the distant Tagus shimmering in the fading light. My phone buzzed, Elena sending confirmation that re-onboarding invitations had been accepted by 11 former employees, including key project leads. Matteo's message followed, sprint rhythm plan ready for review. Each notification felt like a small victory, a brick laid in the foundation of our new culture. As I powered down my computer, I reflected on how far I had come since that autumn morning. I had reclaimed the company, yes, but more importantly, I had rekindled its spirit. Tomorrow, would bring fresh challenges, tough decisions, and inevitable setbacks, but for now, I savoured the quiet triumph of progress. I stood, collected my bag, and headed toward the exit. In the corridor, I passed by the neural sensor lab, where Dr. Patel's team waved with genuine enthusiasm. I nodded and walked on, heart light, knowing that this was more than just a job. It was a legacy reborn, and I would honour it every day. Wednesday morning brought a steady rain against the glass facade of Origin Tech's headquarters, as though the city itself were cleansing in anticipation of our transformation. I arrived just before 8, umbrella dripping at the reception desk. Maria greeted me with a genuine smile that no longer felt obligatory. I returned it and stepped into the elevator, rehearsing the day's priorities, finalize the Innovation Incubator's framework, approve the first cohort of participants, and host a strategy workshop with the product team. My first stop was the newly dedicated incubator room on the 3rd floor, a bright, open space outfitted with modular tables, whiteboards, and prototyping kits. I entered to find a dozen volunteers from various departments already gathered, developers, marketers, designers, and even operations personnel, each clutching notebooks brimming with ideas. Their energy crackled in the air. I tapped gently on a table to draw their attention. "Good morning, everyone. Welcome to our first official incubation sprint," I began, voice clear and enthusiastic. "The goal here is simple. In the next 2 weeks, you'll form cross-functional teams to tackle one strategic challenge or opportunity. You'll have mentorship from senior leaders, access to company resources, and 2 full days at the end to showcase your prototypes." I scanned the room, meeting hopeful eyes. "This is your sandbox. Dream big, test quickly, fail fast, and learn faster. Your work here will shape Origin Tech's future." Applause broke out, modest, yet sincere. I smiled, feeling the familiar rush of possibility. As the teams formed around whiteboards, I retreated to a small nook where I could observe without imposing. At one station, Elena partnered with a UX designer to brainstorm a seamless onboarding app. At another, Matteo joined forces with 2 junior engineers on a predictive analytics dashboard. I scribbled notes in my planner, knowing that these projects could yield breakthroughs far beyond the confines of traditional development cycles. By late morning, I headed to a quick check-in with the finance team. Javier met me in his glass-walled office, where the soft patter of rain provided a rhythmic backdrop. He handed me updated projections reflecting our recent reallocations. "The numbers look tight," he said candidly, "but sustainable. If the incubator sprints yield viable pilots, we could see ROI within a quarter." I nodded. "Excellent. Let's schedule a mid-sprint review in 7 days so we can decide which pilots to fast-track into full development." He agreed and began updating the shared dashboard. Next, I convened a lunch meeting with Mariana Costa and Sofia Pereira in the executive dining room. Over salads and warm soup, we reviewed re-onboarding progress and discussed the upcoming mentorship program. "We've paired each returning veteran with 2 newer hires," Mariana reported, and the feedback from the first meet and greet was overwhelmingly positive. I leaned forward. "Let's formalize these pairs in a rotating schedule. Every 6 weeks, rotate mentors so knowledge continues flowing, and let's capture key learnings in a shared knowledge base." Sophia typed rapidly. "Consider it done." In the afternoon, I led a product strategy workshop, guiding a group of 15 senior and mid-level managers through a prioritization matrix. We evaluated features based on customer impact and technical feasibility, marking each quadrant with colored post-its. The room buzzed with debate. Some suggestions were bold, others deceptively simple. I facilitated by asking probing questions. How would this feature shift the user experience? What data do we need to validate its value? The session yielded 3 high-priority initiatives, which I committed to fast-track for prototyping in the incubator room. Afterward, I retreated to my office to prepare for a video interview with a leading tech publication. They wanted to cover our corporate turnaround and my vision for employee-driven innovation. I reviewed talking points, the importance of legacy, the power of inclusivity, and our commitment to transparent metrics. At 5 p.m. the camera crew arrived. Under bright lights, I spoke about our journey, reflecting on the lessons my grandfather taught me. That true leadership requires listening more than directing, and empowering others more than demanding compliance. Once the interview wrapped, I reviewed emails from employees thanking me for the incubator launch, from returning veterans excited about mentorship, and from a customer who noticed our renewed responsiveness. Each message reinforced the deep cultural shift taking place. I updated my grandfather's journal with a single note. Day 3. Innovation ignited. As I packed my bag, the rain had stopped and the sky began to clear. I walked through the lobby, pausing at the fountain in the atrium where a bronze sculpture of a phoenix overlooked a pool of still water. The water's surface shimmered with broken raindrops, transforming into ripples of promise. I ran a finger along the rim of my messenger bag and smiled. Tomorrow would bring feedback on incubator prototypes, challenges in scaling our pilots, and new faces eager to shape the next chapter. But for tonight, I allowed myself a moment of pride. We had moved from upheaval to action in just 3 days, rekindling the spark my grandfather ignited all those years ago. And I knew, with clarity in my chest and purpose in my stride, that Origin Tech's true renaissance had only just begun. Thursday morning broke clear and calm, as though the world paused to take in the progress we'd made. I arrived at Origin Tech an hour before sunrise, the lobby's glass panels glowing softly in the dawn light. I carried my grandfather's journal in one hand and a steaming cup of dark roast coffee in the other, a ritual that grounded me before the maelstrom of the day began. On the schedule, mid-sprint reviews in the incubator room, follow-up on our sprint rhythm pilot for engineering, and a town hall meeting to share early updates with the wider team. I stepped into the incubator room at precisely 8:30. The atmosphere crackled with tension and excitement. Teams clustered around prototype stations, tweaking and testing their minimum viable products under the glow of overhead LEDs. I moved from group to group, offering encouragement and strategic guidance. At the UX station, Elena's team had transformed their onboarding app into a sleek prototype that walked new hires through company culture, policies, and project demos in an interactive timeline. We've seen completion rates of 92% in internal tests, Elena reported, eyes shining. Users say it feels more personal than a slide deck. I nodded, impressed. Excellent. Let's prepare for a pilot with next week's new hires, collect feedback in real time, and adjust on the fly. In the analytics corner, Matteo's group unveiled a predictive dashboard that ingested historical sales and marketing data to forecast next quarter trends with surprising accuracy. Line graphs pulsed in real time on screens embedded in a sleek, adjustable stand. We're hitting an average error margin of just 4%, Matteo explained. I tapped my pen thoughtfully. That's within our threshold. If we can integrate this into our CRM, marketing can allocate budgets more dynamically. Begin API integration tests immediately. Over by the prototyping bench, a mixed team of designers and operations staff had built a tabletop interactive model, a physical map of our global distribution network equipped with LED nodes showing real-time shipment statuses. When a node turned amber, it signaled potential delays, prompting a system alert. "This is our Atlas dashboard," said Pilar from logistics. "It shrinks supply chain blind spots." I smiled. "Brilliant. Let's plan a live demo for next Monday's executive meeting." After 90 minutes of review, I gathered everyone at the center of the room. "Your work exceeds expectations," I began. "Each of these prototypes has clear business value. Your dedication proves that cross-functional collaboration isn't a luxury. It's essential. Keep iterating. Aim to refine these prototypes for presentation to the board in 2 weeks." Applause echoed around the space. I left them to their sprint, my mind already ticking through next steps. By late morning, I proceeded to the engineering floor for our sprint rhythm check-in. Teams clustered around agile boards, post-its arranged in neat columns of to-do, in progress, and review. I found the lead engineer, Nikolai, who reported that productivity had increased by 30% since the program's inception, and burnout indicators had dropped measurably. "We've seen higher morale and fewer missed deadlines," Nikolai said, pushing his glasses up his nose. "The 2-day break truly allows creative recharge." I made a note. Expand sprint rhythm program company-wide by end of month. At noon, I held a working lunch with senior directors, convening in the glass-walled boardroom. We reviewed the incubator progress, sprint rhythm metrics, and re-onboarding outcomes. Mariana Costa summarized employee sentiment surveys. Overall satisfaction had climbed by 12 points since Monday. I leaned back and smiled. "This momentum is remarkable, but we can't lose steam. Let's schedule monthly check-ins to track these initiatives, refine them, and ensure they scale sustainably." That afternoon, I returned to my office to prepare for the all-company town hall at 5 p.m. I outlined the agenda, share incubator findings, announce expansion of sprint rhythm, unveil the Atlas dashboard pilot, and recognize returning veterans and new hires. I rehearsed key points aloud, ensuring my tone remained authentic and motivational. At the town hall, employees filled the auditorium, the buzz of conversation rising as I stepped onto the stage. I began, "Thanks for gathering on short notice. Today, I'm thrilled to share concrete progress on our renewal journey. First, our innovation incubator has already produced 3 viable prototypes: Elena's onboard plus app, Matteo's forecast dashboard, and the Atlas dashboard for supply chain visibility. Each will move to pilot phase next week. Screens behind me flickered to life, displaying images of each prototype in action. The audience responded with cheers, some standing to applaud. I let the moment linger before continuing. Second, our sprint rhythm program has increased productivity by 30% and reduced burnout. Effective immediately, all teams will adopt this 2-week sprint and 2-day break cadence. We'll provide resources and guidelines to support you. Another round of applause followed. I smiled and pressed forward. And finally, I'm pleased to announce that our re-onboarding week has brought back 15 veterans. some of whom will lead mentorship circles starting next Monday. Please join me in recognizing their return. On screen, the names and faces of returning colleagues appeared. The audience clapped enthusiastically, many standing to greet their former teammates as they came on stage. The atmosphere crackled with unity. I closed with gratitude. These achievements belong to each one of you. Our journey is far from over, but today we celebrate renewal through collaboration and respect. Let's carry this momentum forward. As the meeting ended, I stood backstage, watching the buzz of conversation spill into the corridors. For a moment, I let myself revel in the warmth and camaraderie, proof that a corporation, at its best, could be more than profits. It could be a community. That evening, back at home, I opened my grandfather's journal once more, adding a new entry. Day 4. Collaboration in action. I closed the book and set it on my dresser, knowing that tomorrow would bring fresh challenges, but also fresh opportunities to honor his legacy and shape our future. Friday arrived with a gentle breeze carrying the scent of the Tagus River into the office, a reminder that change often begins with small, subtle shifts. I arrived just past 8, energized by the week's accomplishments, yet keenly aware that sustaining momentum would require both vigilance and adaptability. My day was packed, a walking round through each department to gather informal feedback, a meeting with the marketing and customer success teams to plan an external announcement of our revived initiatives, and an end-of-week wrap-up with the executive committee to recalibrate targets for the coming month. I began with my rounds, setting aside my usual corner office in favor of spontaneous visits. My first stop was the customer success bullpen, where rows of agents fielded calls and chats from clients around the globe. I paused at Maria's desk, where an incoming email alert caught her attention. She flashed me a grin. "Our satisfaction rating just spiked by 6 points this morning," she said, eyes bright. "Clients say they feel heard again." I leaned against her cubicle partition. That's what we aimed for. Thank you for embodying our renewed focus on empathy. Maria beamed, and I continued down the row, exchanging high fives, listening to ideas for process improvements, and noting recurring themes. Employees craved clarity about long-term strategy, consistent feedback loop, and opportunities to celebrate small wins. Next, I strolled through the product design studio, where soft light illuminated sketch pads, mood boards, and tactile prototypes of mobile interfaces. I found Sophia and her team huddled around a large screen, reviewing user testing footage from last week's incubator prototypes. The Onboard Plus app users love the interactive cultural map, Sophia reported. They spend an average of 12 minutes exploring heritage stories and team introductions. I nodded, impressed by the depth of engagement. Let's integrate that content into our main website as well. Help prospective candidates and customers alike feel the heart of Origin Tech. She jotted notes eagerly. I paused to admire their collaborative energy before moving on. By mid-morning, I convened a meeting with the marketing and customer success leads in the corner conference room. The roll-up banner proclaiming Origin Tech Reimagined stood beside a table laden with pastries and coffee. I outlined our objective: craft a cohesive external narrative that highlighted our internal renewal and positioned us as industry pioneers in employee-driven innovation. Jonah, head of marketing, suggested a 2-phase campaign. First, a press release announcing our new leadership vision and incubator successes. Second, a series of customer case studies showcasing prototypes in action. Layla from Customer Success proposed featuring client testimonials about improved response times and personalized support thanks to our revamped processes. We sketched a rough timeline, press release next Tuesday, case study articles over the following month, and a live webinar demonstration for key clients and partners at the quarter's end. I approved the plan, emphasizing authenticity and transparency in all messaging. After a quick lunch of grilled fish and salad at my desk, I prepared for the afternoon's executive committee session. The agenda: review quantitative metrics from the week, discuss qualitative feedback, and set priorities for the following 4-week cycle. In the boardroom, Mariana Costa presented our KPI dashboard. Employee satisfaction up by 14 points since Monday, prototype completion rate at 80% for incubator teams, and customer success net promoter score climbing steadily. Each slide was punctuated by real-time data from our shared dashboard. No sugarcoating, no spin. I congratulated the team on positive trends, then challenged us to maintain these gains and deepen our cultural transformation. Numbers are our guide, but they aren't our destination, I reminded them. Our goal is sustainable growth through people-centric innovation. We broke out into small groups to brainstorm potential roadblocks. Javier from Finance warned of looming budget constraints if we pursued every incubator idea without rigorous filtering. Elena pointed out that some teams still felt disconnected from our sprint and incubator processes, citing communication gaps. Sophia suggested launching weekly pulse surveys to gather anonymous input on morale and roadblocks. I endorsed both proposals, instituting a cross-functional incubator steering committee to vet project viability and deploying short 5-question surveys at the end of each sprint. We assigned owners and deadlines, then reconvened to finalize our roadmap. 1. Incubator Steering Committee formation by next Wednesday. 2. Pulse surveys launched next Friday. 3. Marketing campaign kickoff next Tuesday. 4. Sprint rhythm expansion to sales and support by the following week. With these targets confirmed, we adjourned, leaving me with a sense of structured purpose. Late afternoon, I returned to the incubator room to catch final sprint demos. Teams presented refined prototypes, an AI-powered chatbot for first-line support, a dynamic project status portal for clients, and a VR-based training module for field technicians. Each demonstration drew enthusiastic feedback from on-site directors and fellow participants. I congratulated them and reminded everyone that success here hinged on continuous iteration. Each prototype was a living experiment, not a polished final product. The force of collective creativity filled the room, reaffirming my conviction that empowerment breeds innovation. As the workday wound down, I strolled back to my office and retrieved my grandfather's journal. Flipping to a blank page, I wrote, Day 8. Transparency and trust solidified through open metrics and authentic feedback. I closed the journal and tucked it into my drawer, then glanced out the window at Lisbon's rooftops glowing in the late afternoon sun. Before leaving, I stopped by the reception desk where Maria handed me a small envelope. Inside was a handwritten note from a junior developer I'd never met. Thank you for empowering our team. I've never felt this valued. I look forward to building something extraordinary together. I pressed the note to my chest, feeling the gentle swell of pride and responsibility. Change was not a one-week sprint, it was a continuous journey. But each step, each idea, each grateful note made it worth pursuing. I gathered my things, turned off my desk lamp, and walked out into the crisp evening air, knowing that tomorrow we would continue to write Origin Tech's next chapter, together. Monday morning of the second week felt quietly triumphant. As I stepped through the revolving doors of Origin Tech, the scent of fresh coffee and polished wood greeted me like a homecoming. Over the weekend, the marketing team had finalized our external press release, and the incubator steering committee had convened for a kick-off meeting in the cozy conference room overlooking the Tagus. Today, we would see the first true impact of our efforts. The incubator prototypes would enter pilot phase with real users, and our Onboard Plus app would debut with a cohort of new hires. I made my way to the People Experience Center, where a group of 10 recent hires, hand-picked for diversity of background and role, gathered around a semicircle of ergonomic chairs. Behind them, a large screen displayed the Onboard Plus interface, interactive modules highlighting company history, team member bios, and project case studies. Elena stood by the kiosk, ready to facilitate. "Good morning, everyone," I began, offering a warm smile. "You're our inaugural testers for Onboard Plus. Your feedback will shape how we introduce every new employee moving forward." I gestured to the screen. "Please explore freely for the next 30 minutes, then share your impressions." The testers dove in with curiosity, clicking through heritage stories, watching brief interviews with senior leaders, and completing mini-challenges that unlocked badges. I observed quietly, noting moments of delight when a user discovered a personal anecdote from a colleague, or paused to admire an animated timeline of the company's milestones. After 30 minutes, I invited them to share feedback. One participant, Sophia in customer success, praised the cultural map module. "Seeing how you celebrated our first Latin American office opening makes me feel part of something bigger." Another, Thomas from engineering, suggested adding bite-sized quizzes to reinforce key policies. A third tester, Lucia from logistics, recommended a choose-your-own storyline that adapts to different roles. I listened attentively and jotted notes, thanking each individual. Their insights would guide the next iteration. From there, I walked to the product lab, where the steering committee awaited. We reviewed progress on the 3 incubator pilots selected last week: Onboard Plus, the Forecast Dashboard API, and the Atlas Dashboard. Each team reported on pilot deployment metrics and user feedback from internal stakeholders. I learned that the Forecast API prototype had been integrated into 2 live marketing campaigns, reducing budget misallocations by 17%. The Atlas Dashboard trial in our Amsterdam warehouse had identified 5 critical bottlenecks during overnight shipments, prompting process refinements that cut average delays by 24 hours. As the data unfolded, I felt a surge of confirmation. Our collaborative experiments were yielding quantifiable results. I asked each project lead to present a brief roadmap for full-scale rollout, including resource requirements and risk assessments. We agreed on the following timeline. Onboard Plus. Iterate based on tester feedback. Pilot with 50 new hires in 4 weeks. Forecast API. Integrate with the CRM system and launch external beta for top 5 clients in 6 weeks. Atlas Dashboard. Expand data node deployment to 2 additional regional hubs by the end of the quarter. We also noted potential challenges. oversaturation of technical debt for the API team, UX polish needed for Onboard Plus, and data integration complexities for Atlas. I assigned mentors from senior leadership to each pilot: Elena for Onboard Plus, Javier for Forecast API, and Pilar for Atlas. Their guidance would help each team navigate obstacles swiftly. By late morning, I met with the marketing team to finalize the press release. Jonah had drafted a compelling narrative: Origin Tech's revival through employee-driven innovation, anchored by the legacy of our founder. We added quotes from returning veterans, snapshots of prototype successes, and an invitation for clients to join our upcoming live webinar. I suggested including a sidebar about our People First initiative and Sprint Rhythm program to underscore our holistic approach. Jonah nodded, adjusting the layout. "This will position us as pioneers in corporate reinvention," he said. I agreed. Authenticity would resonate more deeply than slick promotional copy. After a quick lunch with Matteo, who shared updates on the Sprint Rhythm pilot in the support teams, I spent the afternoon with HR finalizing logistical details for the Choose Your Own storyline module in Onboard Plus. Sophia and her team projected content milestones, subject matter expert interviews, and design sprints. I reminded them to keep the interface accessible for non-technical roles and to create alternative accessibility options for colleagues with disabilities. At 3 p.m., I took a quiet moment in my office, sipping herbal tea and reviewing my grandfather's journal. I reflected on his handwritten note: "Leaders who listen inspire loyalty." My week's work had been rooted in that principle, empowering users, soliciting feedback, and refining our path together. I added a new journal entry. Day 9. Pilot phase commences. Proof that collaboration fuels progress. Before wrapping up, I dropped by the cafe corner, where employees gathered for afternoon breaks. I overheard conversations about prototype demos, new press coverage teasers, and genuine excitement for the company's direction. Sarah from accounting raised her cup in a quiet toast as I passed. "To new beginnings," she mouthed. I returned the gesture, my heart warmed by her enthusiasm. As the workday ended, I closed my laptop and stood, stretching arms overhead. The sun dipped low, painting the skyline in oranges and purples. Outside, Lisbon's streets hummed with evening activity. I walked to the exit, pausing to look back at Origin Tech's illuminated logo. In its glow, I saw not just a brand, but a community reborn, one that valued people before profits and innovation before inertia. Tomorrow, our live webinar would showcase pilot successes to clients. New hires would onboard with Onboard Plus at scale, and we would continue listening, iterating, and building the future my grandfather once dreamed of. With gratitude and resolve, I stepped into the evening. Request Tuesday morning brought a crisp clarity that matched my anticipation for our first client webinar demonstration. After 9 days of internal pilots and iterative improvements, today we would share our progress with external partners and invite their feedback. I arrived at the office before 8, the Tagus River glinting silver through the lobby windows. My grandfather's journal lay in my bag, a talisman I would consult later, but for now my focus was on the task at hand. By 8:30, the webinar team had transformed the main presentation room into a hybrid broadcast studio, high-definition cameras, adjustable lighting rigs, and a sleek LED backdrop displaying the Origin Tech logo beside the words "Innovation in Action." I greeted the technical crew a mix of in-house AV specialists and 2 external producers who had flown in for the event, and reviewed the run-of-show document one last time. Introductions, demo of the Onboard Plus app, a walkthrough of the Forecast API integration, a live look at the Atlas dashboard in our Amsterdam hub, and a moderated Q&A with clients. At 9 o'clock, I took my place at the podium. The room was quiet except for the soft hum of cameras warming up. I cleared my throat and smiled into the primary lens. "Good morning, and thank you for joining us," I began, voice calm but energized. "I'm Arlo Silva, majority shareholder and chief vision officer of Origin Tech. Over the past week and a half, we've embarked on an ambitious journey of renewal, rooted in a simple premise. When we empower our people, innovation follows. Today, you'll see 3 concrete examples of that principle in action." I clicked the remote, and the Onboard Plus interface appeared on the central screen. First, our redesigned onboarding experience, Onboard Plus, has successfully piloted with 20 new hires. It transforms orientation from a paperwork slog into an interactive exploration of culture, process, and purpose. A live feed showed a new hire dashboard navigating company milestones. Users reported a 96% satisfaction rate and an average completion time under 30 minutes, far more engaging than traditional slide decks. Next, we transitioned to the Forecast API. I shared a live demo in our CRM environment where marketing managers could adjust parameters and see real-time budget projections. Our pilot campaigns have already reduced misallocations by 17%, I said, highlighting dynamic graphs that updated before the audience's eyes. This means more efficient resource allocation and higher ROI benefits you can unlock immediately. The third segment focused on the Atlas dashboard. I handed the presentation to Pilar from our logistics team, who connected from the Amsterdam hub via a high-definition video link. Behind her, shelves of shipping crates and a bank of monitors displayed real-time shipment statuses. With Atlas, we've pinpointed 5 critical bottlenecks in our network and cut average delays by 24 hours, she explained, gesturing to a digital map with glowing nodes. The client audience watched as she navigated through hours of live data in seconds. After the demos, I returned to lead the Q&A. Clients from Europe, North America, and Asia had submitted questions in advance, ranging from data security concerns to integration timelines and customization options. I addressed each thoughtfully. All pilot data is encrypted at rest and in transit, meeting GDPR and CCPA standards. We anticipate full API rollout within 6 weeks, and customization modules will be available in our partner portal by month's end. One participant asked how smaller clients could engage with these tools without large IT teams. I smiled at the question. Our incubator approach is designed for scalability. We're developing low-code integration kits and comprehensive support documentation, along with dedicated onboarding specialists to guide you through setup. Our goal is to democratize innovation, regardless of company size. Another client inquired about the human element. How do you ensure your people-first ethos persists as you scale these initiatives globally? I paused, recalling my grandfather's words. Lead with passion and trust. I replied, we're launching a global champions program, hand-picked ambassadors in every region who will champion our values, collect feedback, and serve as liaisons between local teams and headquarters. This ensures our culture thrives alongside our technology. By 11:30, the webinar concluded with a heartfelt thank you and an invitation for follow-up meetings. The technical team began breaking down equipment while I exchanged congratulations with Pilar, Elena, and Matteo, who had joined remotely. Their pride was evident even through pixelated video feeds. In the afternoon, I convened a debrief with the core team in the incubator room. We reviewed engagement metrics from the webinar platform, attendance rates, audience retention graphs, and chat sentiment analysis. Attendance peaked at 82% through the demos and dipped only slightly during the Q&A, indicating strong interest. Chat sentiment was overwhelmingly positive, with repeated themes of innovative, user-friendly, and forward-thinking. We plotted next steps, finalized low-code kits, expand the Champions Program framework, and schedule one-on-one onboarding for interested clients. I assigned each task an owner and deadline, then closed the session by inviting a brief round of personal reflections. Elena noted the pride she felt seeing a client comment, "This company clearly values its employees," while Matteo shared relief that technical feasibility concerns had been allayed. Later, as I returned to my office, I retrieved my grandfather's journal. On a fresh page, I wrote, Day 10. Shared vision realized. External validation fuels our momentum. I closed the book and placed it carefully in my drawer before shutting down my computer. Stepping into the Lisbon dusk, I felt the gentle satisfaction of a week's work coming full circle. We had not only reignited Origin Tech's internal spark, but we had shown the world what belief in people could accomplish. With the evening breeze carrying the river's whispers, I walked home with a renewed sense of purpose. Tomorrow we would build on this success, deepen client partnerships, and continue leading with heart. Wednesday arrived with a soft glow of dawn filtering through my curtains, and I awoke with a quiet sense of anticipation. Our webinar had opened doors to new client conversations, but today's focus would be cementing relationships and refining what we'd learned. I dressed in a charcoal grey blazer, less formal than my tailored navy suit but still authoritative, and headed into the office, notebook in hand. By 9 a.m. I was seated in the client engagement lounge, a reimagined space with comfortable chairs, low tables strewn with whiteboards, and shelves of company and client-branded swag. The first of our follow-up meetings began at 9:30. A video call with Meridian Solutions, a medium-sized retail company in Munich. They'd expressed strong interest in our forecast API but wanted clarity on integration with their legacy ERP system. I joined the call alongside Javier from Finance and Miguel from our integration team. The Meridian CIO explained their pain points, budget overruns caused by unpredictable demand spikes, siloed data across channels, and a small IT staff stretched thin. I listened intently, then spoke. Our forecast API can plug into disparate data sources, sales, inventory, marketing, normalize the inputs, and produce rolling projections. We'll provide a low-code adapter specifically built for your ERP version to minimize IT overhead. Miguel chimed in with technical specifics, outlining the adapter's architecture and expected implementation timeline of 3 weeks. The CIO's expression shifted from skepticism to curiosity. "That timeline works," she said, "as long as you can train our team to manage it independently." Eleanor's voice crackled through my earpiece. "We can deliver a 2-day on-site workshop to your Munich office, plus ongoing virtual office hours for the..." First quarter, I relayed her proposal. The CIO nodded. Let's move forward. Send over a statement of work and we'll sign next week. We wrapped the call with friendly goodbyes, and I exhaled, heart pounding with satisfaction. At 11 a.m., I returned to my office to sketch an outline of our new engagement process. It needed to be as people-centric externally as our internal initiatives, clear timelines, accessible resources, regular feedback loops, and dedicated points of contact. I jotted headings, onboarding workshop, technical office hours, monthly progress reviews, and client feedback integration. Each section expanded with bullet points, what success would look like, key stakeholders, success metrics. Lunch was a quick affair, a turkey wrap and green juice at my desk, while I prepared for an internal strategy session at 1 p.m. with the product and engineering leads. We met in the incubator room, where the mood was electric from 2 days of client demos. I opened the meeting. Our Meridian Solutions partnership is a test case for turning pilot projects into scalable offerings. Let's define a productized version of the forecast API, packaged, documented, and supported for clients of every size. We debated pricing tiers, support models, and feature sets. After 90 minutes, we agreed on a 3-tier subscription model. Core, basic forecasting, advanced, customizable dashboards, and enterprise, full ERP integration with on-site support. I tasked the product team to draft a go-to-market plan by Friday. At 3 p.m., I joined the weekly Champions Council, our global ambassadors core, spanning Lisbon, São Paulo, Singapore, and Toronto. Each regional champion shared insights. São Paulo reported high interest in incubator sprints from local tech universities. Singapore praised our sprint rhythm model's adaptability for hybrid work. In Toronto, the champion asked for localized compliance training modules. I listened, then outlined action items, expand university partnerships for fresh talent, develop sprint rhythm guidelines for remote teams, and collaborate with HR to build compliance content aligned with Canadian regulations. The Council's collective energy reminded me how our people-first ethos resonated around the world. By 5 p.m., I headed to the People Experience Center for an informal innovation cafe, an open house forum where any employee could drop by to pitch ideas or raise concerns. The room buzzed with chatter, and I greeted colleagues warmly. A junior developer named Priya skewered me with a probing question. How do we ensure our incubator culture doesn't become a one-off experiment? I paused, considering. By embedding innovation into our everyday workflows, through sprint breaks, shared dashboards, and rotating incubator cohorts. We'll measure participation rates and idea-to-implementation ratios each quarter, then tie them to performance reviews. Innovation must be part of your job description, not an extracurricular activity. Priya nodded thoughtfully and moved on, satisfied. As dusk settled over Lisbon, I returned to my office for a final review of the day's accomplishments. My grandfather's journal lay open, awaiting my reflection. I wrote Day 11. From pilots to partnerships, scaling innovation externally. Closing the journal, I felt the steady hum of progress ebb through me. The journey was far from over, but today we had turned concept into commitment for our people and our clients alike. With that thought, I powered down my computer and stepped out into the warm evening air, ready for whatever tomorrow would bring. Thursday morning dawned clear, sunlight dancing off the terracotta rooftops as I made my way to Origin Tech headquarters. My mind buzzed with the momentum we'd built, client commitments, product roadmaps, and our internal culture, shift all humming in unison. Today's agenda was ambitious: finalize the three-tier forecast API offering, launch the first Champions Council regional workshop in Sao Paulo via video conference, and host an afternoon innovation showcase where incubator teams would pitch mature prototypes to senior leadership for full-scale funding. I arrived at my office just after 8 and reviewed the deck for the product launch. By 8:30, I joined Javier, the finance lead, and Camila from product management in the glass boardroom overlooking the Avenida da Liberdade. We discussed pricing models for our core, advanced, and enterprise tiers. All figures in the deck were written out: €1,000 for core, €2,500 for advanced, and €5,000 for enterprise per quarter. We adjusted rounding to reflect regional variations, ensuring affordability for small enterprises while preserving value for large clients. Camilla proposed a complimentary 2-week trial for newcomers, and Javier calculated the budgetary impact. Initial costs would be balanced by projected annualized revenue streams in under 9 months. Satisfied, I asked Camilla to finalize the external documentation by day's end. At 10 a.m., I convened the São Paulo Champions Workshop via high-definition video link. Regional ambassadors had gathered in our Alphaville office, many dialing in from local co-working spaces. The session began with me greeting everyone. Bom dia, champions! Today, we'll explore how to cultivate our sprint rhythm and innovation culture across Latin America. I invited presentations from 3 local champions: Mariana, who led sprints in Belo Horizonte, Ricardo, who had piloted an off-site incubator for university interns, and Joanna, who organized virtual hackathons for remote teams. Each shared slides translated into Portuguese that illustrated successes and obstacles. Mariana's team had increased local feature adoption by 33% through targeted sprints. Ricardo's interns delivered a prototype logistics chatbot in just 1 week, demonstrating the power of condensed focus. Joanna's hackathons generated 40 viable ideas, 4 of which advanced to incubator status. After each presentation, we discussed best practices, clear sprint goals, accessible collaboration tools, and scheduled reflection sessions to capture learnings. I concluded by announcing a formal Champions Council fund of €50,000 to support regional innovation events, inviting proposals by next Monday. Following the workshop, I returned to the innovation showcase set up in the 3rd-floor incubator room. Teams had transformed the space into a gallery of posters, touchscreens, and live demos. I inspected each station. First, Eleanor's onboard, plus team demonstrated their upgraded role-specific pathways, now featuring adaptive branching logic so that customer success roles saw different modules than engineers or designers. They had increased completion efficiency by 8% over the initial pilot. Impressive progress. Next, Mateo's forecast API presenters showcased a low-code configuration dashboard that allowed marketers to adjust forecast parameters through toggle switches and slider bars, reducing integration complexity for non-technical users. They explained how they'd reduced setup time from 2 days to under 2 hours. I nodded approvingly. In the back corner, Pilar's Atlas dashboard crew unveiled an augmented reality overlay for warehouse managers. Donning AR glasses, they could see live shipment data projected over physical crates, enabling immediate rerouting decisions. Pilar demonstrated with a headset, guiding me through a simulated delay scenario. The room hushed as I walked the virtual warehouse, spotting red nodes indicating issues and tapping to dispatch instructions. The seamless fusion of physical and digital provoked genuine awe. At noon, senior directors filtered in for the official pitch session. I called everyone to attention. Thank you for joining our innovation showcase. Each of these prototypes has matured through rigorous sprints and real-world feedback. Today, we must decide which will receive full-scale funding and integration into our core offerings. I introduced each team lead, who presented a 5-minute summary of user metrics, ROI projections, and resource requests. The board deliberated quietly, then used secure tablets to cast confidential votes. While votes were tallied, I escorted directors to the cafe area for lunch, a spread of sandwiches, fruit, and Portuguese pastries. Conversations buzzed around revamped products and client enthusiasm. When everyone reconvened, Mariana Costa announced the results: full backing for Onboard Plus, expanded API integration resources for the forecast offering, and a €125,000 pilot for scaling Atlas into 3 more regional hubs. The room erupted in applause, and I congratulated each team, emphasizing that their successes embodied our people-first ethos. After lunch, I retreated to my office to prepare for tomorrow's town hall, where I'd share these showcase outcomes with the entire company. I drafted my remarks, celebrate our innovation milestones, announce funding allocations, and reaffirm our commitment to continuous collaboration. As I crafted the closing sentiment, together we will transform ideas into impact, one sprint at a time, I felt a deep satisfaction in how far we'd come. Before logging off, I opened my grandfather's journal and wrote, Day 12, Innovation Funding Secured, Proof that Trust and Collaboration Pay Dividends. I closed the journal carefully, placing it on my desk alongside the framed photo of Arlo Silva, whose vision had set this journey in motion. Stepping out into the late afternoon light, I paused to admire Lisbon's skyline once more. The past 12 days had rewritten Origin Tech's story, from upheaval to empowerment, from stagnation to innovation. The real work lay ahead, scaling responsibly, nurturing our culture, and ensuring that every voice continued to shape our path. But for today, I allowed myself a moment of pride before diving back into the promise of tomorrow. Friday morning arrived with an almost festive energy. The week's successes, the Champions Fund Awards, funded incubator projects, and client commitments had rippled through the halls, sparking renewed enthusiasm. I slipped into my office for a quick moment before the day's events, opened my grandfather's journal, and read the last entry. Day 12. Innovation funding secured. Proof that trust and collaboration pay dividends. I smiled and penned a new line. Day 13. Celebration and consolidation, solidifying our gains and preparing for scale. By 8:30, the main auditorium was set for our second all-hands meeting of the month. Employees filed in, chatting animatedly. Some paused to post sticky notes on a wins wall, celebrating personal victories and team milestones. I took the stage, heart thrumming with anticipation, as the room fell silent. "Good morning, everyone," I began, voice steady. "We've reached a milestone week. Our Innovation Showcase secured funding for 3 major initiatives. Our Champions Council is active across 4 regions, and our clients are lining up to partner with us. Today, we celebrate those achievements and chart our course forward." I clicked the remote, and slides appeared behind me. Logos for Onboard Plus, Forecast API, and Atlas Dashboard, each accompanied by the funding amounts, €100,000. €80,000 and €125,000 respectively. Applause erupted, then subsided into an expectant hush. "First," I said, "I want to spotlight our Onboard Plus team led by Elena. Please come forward." Elena stepped up, joined by her colleagues, and accepted a round of hearty applause. I presented them with a commemorative plaque designed by our in-house creative studio, an embossed metal plate reading, "Pioneers of People-Centric Onboarding." She beamed as we posed for photos. Next, I introduced Matteo and the Forecast API squad. They approached to receive their plaque. "Masters of Predictive Precision," it read. Their quiet pride was unmistakable as they carried it back to their seats, high-fiving teammates along the way. Finally, Pilar and her Atlas team came forward. The plaque they received bore the inscription, "Architects of Operational Insight." The crowd cheered as Pilar raised the award overhead, her eyes shining with emotion. With the award ceremony complete, I transitioned to the next agenda item, scaling our successful pilots. "Now that we've invested in these prototypes," I explained, "our focus shifts to integration and expansion. Here's how we'll proceed." I outlined 3 strategic streams. 1. Integration roadmaps, Onboard Plus will be built into our HR platform by the end of Q3, with customizable modules for all departments. Forecast API will enter general availability on our developer portal in 6 weeks with dedicated support channels. Atlas Dashboard will pilot in 2 additional hubs, Toronto and Singapore, before year-end. Dusra. Global Champions expansion will onboard 10 new regional champions next month, prioritizing emerging markets in Africa and Southeast Asia. All quarterly virtual summits will connect all champions for best practice sharing. Moondram. Culture and recognition, a monthly innovation spotlight, will feature new ideas from any employee with small grants and company-wide recognition. A digital wins wall will remain active, and each month will spotlight top contributors in our internal newsletter. Slides, detailed timelines, owners, and key metrics for each stream. I emphasized accountability. We'll track progress transparently, report monthly, and adjust as needed. Our strength lies in our collective commitment. After the presentation, I invited questions. A junior developer asked how non-technical teams could engage with the incubator process. I encouraged them to apply through our new Idea Access program, which pairs technical mentors with any employee to co-develop proposals. Another employee asked about remote participation. I announced we would establish virtual labs, online collaboration spaces complete with digital whiteboards and scheduled facilitator hours. With questions answered, I closed the meeting. Today we celebrate, but tomorrow we build. Together we'll carry this momentum into every project, every partnership, and every corner of Origin Tech. Let's raise the bar even higher. The applause that followed was warm and sustained, a chorus of belief in our shared future. Later that afternoon, I convened a small team for a lessons learned workshop. We reviewed what had worked, rapid iteration cycles, cross-functional pairings, clear recognition, and what we could improve, communication cadence, resource prioritization, and broader employee awareness. Notes were captured and assigned to owners, ensuring continuous refinement. As evening fell, I paused at the reception desk where Maria handed me a single sheet of paper. a collage of employee feedback emojis, hearts, stars and thumbs up, collected during the all-hands meeting. Taped to the back was a handwritten note, "Thank you for making us believe again." I held it close, feeling the echo of every late-night strategy session, every nervous pitch, and every triumphant prototype. My grandfather had built Origin Tech on a foundation of people. 13 days ago, we began rebuilding that foundation brick by brick. Now, as I looked out at the city lights of Lisbon, I knew the real journey, the one of sustained growth, continuous innovation, and unwavering humanity, lay before us. And I was ready to lead it. Saturday morning arrived with a peaceful hush that contrasted sharply with the frenetic pace of the work week. Though the office was closed, I found myself drawn in by the promise of reflection, a chance to review our progress and refine plans before Monday's springboard into week 3. I arrived at headquarters shortly after 9, the lobby empty except for the soft pulse of the air handling system and the distant hum of late-night cleaning crews finishing their rounds. My first destination was the rooftop terrace, a seldom-used space with panoramic views of Lisbon's terracotta skyline and the Tagus River beyond. I carried my grandfather's journal, a thermos of strong black coffee, and a stack of printed dashboards, the weekly KPI summary, incubator metrics, client engagement analytics, and culture survey results. I settled at a small wrought iron table, uncapped my pen, and took a long sip of coffee before opening the journal to a fresh page. I reflected on day 14, consolidation and calibration, ensuring our systems align with our vision. Below that, I drew 4 columns labeled successes, challenges, opportunities, and next steps. Under successes, I noted innovation momentum, 3 major prototypes funded and entering scaled pilots. Cultural buy-in, employee satisfaction up by 20 points since the leadership change. Client validation, forecast API commitment from Meridian Solutions and webinar engagement metrics. Global reach, Champions Council active in 5 regions, with local workshops producing measurable outcomes. Under challenges, I listed resource allocation, balancing budget constraints while scaling multiple initiatives concurrently. Communication overload, feedback, indicating some teams feel bombarded by new programs and announcements. Technical debt, engineering leads reporting spikes in legacy system maintenance, slowing feature development. Onboarding consistency, variations in how different departments implement sprint rhythm and incubator processes. In opportunities, I wrote, centralized dashboard, build an integrated portal for incubator progress, client engagements, and culture metrics, reducing email volume. Cross-regional learnings, host a global virtual summit next month to share best practices among Champions Council regions. Technical task force, assemble a rotating team to address critical technical debt over innovation downtime sprints. Departmental ambassadors, expand the Idea Access program by appointing ambassadors in each functional area to streamline communications. Finally, next steps. 1. Develop dashboard prototype by Tuesday. Collaborate with IT, data, and communications to integrate key metrics. 2nd, plan global summit. Set date. Invite regional champions. Define agenda by Wednesday. Moondram. Form technical task force. Issue call for volunteers and assign initial sprint by end of week. 4th, launch ambassador network. identify and onboard 10 departmental ambassadors by next Friday. Satisfied with my analysis, I closed the journal and surveyed the horizon. This exercise had crystallized the path forward. I poured the remainder of my coffee into a planter to water the succulent I'd rescued from the dusty break room weeks earlier, a symbolic gesture of nurturing growth. Descending the stairs to the main floor, I walked through the incubator room, now transformed into a quiet studio, where a small team was testing the dashboard prototype interface I'd sketched in the springboard meeting. They looked up and greeted me warmly. I praised their progress and reserved time next week for a hands-on review session. Next, I ventured into the executive suite, where the cafeteria staff had prepared a brunch spread for weekend office cleanup volunteers. I thanked them for their support in making the space welcoming and met with a few interns eager to see how senior leadership engaged over the weekend. I shared highlights of my morning reflection, emphasizing the importance of rest, perspective, and intentional planning. Their eyes lit up, and one remarked, "It's inspiring to see leadership practice what they preach." As the clock ticked past noon, I returned to my office to draft the agenda for Monday's executive committee meeting. I outlined the consolidated dashboard presentation, the global summit planning session, and the technical task force charter discussion. I scheduled brief one-on-one check-ins with Elena, Mateo, Pilar, and Javier to ensure alignment on their deliverables. Before leaving, I opened my grandfather's journal one last time and wrote a final note for the day. Day 14, Reflection. Strategic pause unlocks clarity. Structure our next leaps with intention. I closed the book, tucked it under my arm, and headed toward the exit. Outside, Lisbon streets were alive with weekend markets and street musicians. I inhaled the crisp air, feeling that same spark I had on my first day back in the office, only now tempered by 14 days of lessons learned and victories earned. As I walked home, I knew that true leadership balanced bold action with thoughtful reflection, and I was ready to lead Origin Tech into its next chapter, one deliberate step at a time. Sunday evening settled over Lisbon with a gentle hush, as if the city itself were pausing to draw a breath before the week ahead. I sat at my dining table in my apartment, the city lights twinkling through the window like distant stars. On the table before me lay the final set of reports for our 2-week sprint, updated KPI dashboards, customer feedback summaries, financial projections, and culture survey results. Tonight, I would synthesize these into a report for Monday's all hands and set the tone for week 3. I began by reviewing the KPI dashboard. Employee satisfaction was now up by 24 points since I reclaimed the company. Prototype to pilot conversion stood at 75% across our incubator projects. Client adoption of the forecast. API had reached 15% of target accounts in its first week of general availability, and the Champions Council had grown to 7 active regions. These numbers weren't just metrics, they were proof that our people-first, innovation-driven approach was yielding tangible results. Next, I read through the culture survey comments, deliberately sampling voices from every department. Clerks in customer support praised the sprint rhythm breaks for reducing burnout. Designers celebrated transparent metrics that allowed them to see how their work influenced revenue, and R&D engineers felt empowered by leadership's willingness to reinvest in their prototypes. One comment stood out. For the first time, I feel like my ideas matter. I made a mental note to feature that quote in Monday's presentation. Turning to the financial projections, I saw that our reallocation of resources, cutting discretionary travel and consultant fees, had freed up enough budget to support the Atlas dashboard expansion without jeopardizing quarterly targets. The forecasts projected a 5% increase in revenue growth for Q3, driven largely by renewed client confidence and upsell opportunities around our incubator offerings. I underlined those figures, knowing they would bolster the message that investment in people and innovation pays dividends. With data in hand, I opened my grandfather's journal to a blank spread. Beneath today's date, I wrote, Day 15. From vision to victory, celebrating our journey and committing to continuous renewal. I paused, pen hovering, and reflected on the journey, the stunned surprise of being fired, the revelation of my grandfather's trust, the strategic coup that restored leadership, and the whirlwind of initiatives that had reignited our culture and market position. 15 days felt both monumental and yet only the beginning. I sketched a simple outline for Monday's all hands. 1. Opening reflection, a brief recount of day 1 through day 15, emphasizing key milestones. Highlighting the paragraph. For the first time, I feel like my ideas matter. 2. Data-driven wins, or visuals of satisfaction scores, prototype conversions, and revenue forecasts. Client testimonials, including Meridian Solutions endorsement. Moondram. Next phase roadmap or official rollout dates for onboard plus forecast API expansion and Atlas dashboard hubs or launch of the integrated innovation dashboard and ambassador network. Nangavathu. Commitment to culture, or introduction of the quarterly Innovation Accelerator grant. Announcement of cross-regional virtual summit next Friday. 5. Closing charge, reaffirming our shared values, collaboration, integrity, innovation, respect, invitation to every employee. Share one idea for our next sprint. Let's write day 16 together. Satisfied with the structure, I drafted my speaking points in concise, heartfelt language, ensuring each segment honored the human stories behind the numbers. I prepared a slide showcasing the Wins Wall photos from last Friday's All Hands and another featuring the first Champions Council workshop snapshots, underscoring our global momentum. At 10 p.m., I stepped onto my balcony for a moment, gazing at the city's reflection in the river. The Tagus was calm, its surface mirroring the lights of the shore. I whispered to myself, this is just the beginning. The city's gentle hum felt like agreement. Returning inside, I closed my grandfather's journal and placed it on a small shelf beside the framed photograph of him smiling at that ribbon-cutting ceremony. I turned off the lamp, leaving only the soft glow of the streetlights. Tomorrow I would stand before every member of Origin Tech and recount our shared story, how trust, vision, and relentless collaboration had turned upheaval into opportunity. I would challenge each person to contribute to day 16, to bring one bold idea, one act of empathy, one spark of innovation. Because leadership, I reminded myself, isn't about a single individual or moment. It's about the collective energy we unleash when we believe in each other. And with that thought, I closed my eyes, confident that together we would continue writing the next chapters of our legacy, one deliberate, inspired day at a time.